In this episode of the Breakdance Unleashed series, we will learn how we can create a mouse follow interaction similar to this avatar using Breakdance and Elements Hive. We'll start by adding a div element to our section to represent the avatar. Give it a background color, a width and height, and a border radius. On the original website, the avatar has icons representing the eyes and mouth, with some basic keyframe animations to rotate the eyes and scale the mouth. In our case, we will forgo the mouth and represent the eyes using div elements. Under the avatar div, we will add another div and label it eyes. This will represent our eyes wrapper. We want the eyes wrapper to fill the whole avatar container. To do so, we will give the avatar container a display of grid and an items per row of 1. Under the eyes div container, we will add another div and give it a label of right. Then we will give it a background color, a width and height, and a border radius. Next, we will add another div element underneath it to represent the iris. Apply the necessary styling and align it to the center. Then we will apply a position absolute on the div labeled right and position it where we want it to be within the eyes container. Now we can duplicate it, give a label of left to the duplicated item, and change the position to where we need it to be. With this, the basic structure for the avatar is finished. Looking at the original page, we can see that the avatar has some fake lighting backed in. Looking at the markup, we can see that an image was used for this highlight effect. If we open the image, we can see a semi-transparent image of a sphere with a more opaque portion around the edges. For completeness' sake, let's copy the image to Figma and see one of the ways we can create similar highlights. We can use the ellipse tool to create a sphere and give an opacity of 5%. Then for the contour highlights, we can add an inner shadow effect with a white color and an opacity of 70%. We then use the inner shadow settings to create the overall shape that we are looking for. And you can keep stacking inner shadow effects with different settings until you are happy with the results. For highlights that are further away from the edge, we can add one or more rectangle or ellipse shapes, give it a background color and some opacity, then apply a layer blur and position it where we want. And that's the basics behind this effect. Let's go back to our page and apply the image that we have. On the avatar container settings, we will add the image as an overlay image. And change the settings so that it covers the whole container without repeating. The highlight seems too bright compared to the original site, so we will decrease the opacity. Another way we can create this kind of highlight is by simply using CSS. Let's duplicate the avatar container to see how this can be done. On the duplicated avatar, let's delete the overlay that we have. And paste in some CSS code to create an inner shadow using the box shadow property. Alright, now we can move on to the mouse follow interaction. Looking at the original page, we can see that the avatar and the rest of the elements move in the same direction toward the mouse location at different speeds. On the avatar container, we will enable the mouse track extension from Elements Hive. We only want it to move a little bit, so we give it a max distance of 20 pixels and a speed factor of 3 so that the rate of change is relatively snappy. We will also enable the mouse track extension on the eyes container. This time we want it to move by quite a bit, so we give it a maximum distance of 100 pixels and a speed factor of 1.7 so that it moves relatively fast but still slower than the avatar container. Unlike the original page, the eyes on our avatar are overflowing the container. To fix this, we will set the overflow to hidden on the avatar container. Much better. We could pretty much call it a day and use it as is, but since we went to the trouble of adding those irises as div elements, why not apply the mouse track extension on them as well and add another kinetic layer to this interaction? Let's choose the right iris and enable the mouse track extension on it. We will give it a max distance of 15 pixels and speed factor of 2. Then we will copy the settings and paste them on the left iris. We can finally take a look at the result on the front end. It looks and feels pretty good. The combination of the shading and layered movement gives it a 3D-like feel. The eyes are always targeting the mouse as expected, and it feels like there is weight to the individual movements. Let's add a bit more motion to the avatar container by increasing the max distance value to 30. Currently, all the elements follow the current mouse position without taking into account their own position within the viewport. That is to say, the center of the viewport is the transform origin of all the elements. This is the same behavior as the original website. But we can add another layer of interactivity by changing the tracking mode on the iris elements. We will change the tracking mode on both iris elements. By changing the tracking mode to center aware, the element will take its center position into account as well when deciding whether to move in a given direction. As you can see, the iris elements now have a different motion when compared to the eyes and are tracking the mouse position independently from each other. The last piece missing is the background color changing based on the mouse position. We don't have a feature for this on Breakdance or Elements Hive yet, but we can easily implement something similar when one of the mouse effects extensions are enabled. If we open the developer console on the front end, we can see a number of mouse-related global CSS variables on the body. The variables are populated by the Global Utilities dependency in Elements Hive, which is used by all of the mouse effects extensions. There are two main variants, one in pixel values and another in a normalized range from -1 to 1, representing the current mouse position. We can use these normalized variables in combination with an HSL declaration to change the colors based on the mouse position. The HSL function describes colors using 3 parameters: hue, saturation, and lightness. By changing these parameters using CSS variables, we can dynamically change the color that is being generated. Let's add a variable for the hue component and use the calc function to calculate a value using the variable for the global mouse position on the x-axis multiplied by 100. Now, when we move the mouse, the hue changes based on the mouse position on the x-axis. And we can add more variety by creating another variable for the saturation component using the global mouse variable for the y-axis. And with this, our element is ready. Now you can create similar interactions on your breakdance websites with ease. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to be notified of new videos.